Welcome here to the Coaches Corner on the Vanguard Athletics Podcast Network. I am Mike Teague and joined by Jeff Melton, who is
What's up, guys?
the man of the hour here. Excited to bring you another discussion here with one of our brilliant coaches, another esteemed member this year. And this next episode will be Kris Dorn, our beach volleyball coach.
Yes,
and
sir.
he is a phenomenal person, and not just on the court, but off the court. But Jeff, you're able to sit down with Mr. Dorn and talk with him through a lot of different things. How was your conversation with him, and what can kind of listeners expect?
It's awesome. I love Kris. Kris is one of my favorite people, both as a coach and just as a human. And I think it's really interesting to see kind of where his journey guided him through and kind of how he came back out the other side of that and kind of shifted his philosophy of how he views training and team building and culture and things like that. Sitting here just talking to him, I was like, "Can I go play for you?" I know this isn't a male beach volleyball. It's not really a male sport yet, but I was like, man, I'd run through a brick wall right now for this guy.
Yeah.
Just how intentional he is, and how the wins and losses on the scoreboard are so minimal. But if you do the things the right way, those will naturally be a byproduct of just creating that environment where it's okay to be vulnerable, and vulnerability actually leads to greater success of people pushing each other because they don't want to be the weak link out of respect and love for each other, not out of like a place of fear or anything like that.
Yeah, no, that's good. And yeah, we hear Kris preach that every day, and it's so fun to see how his team has grown, and just it's their third season now, right?
Yeah.
Third season now. So yeah, super excited for you guys to listen to this conversation. So let's jump in here with the conversation between Jeff Melton and head beach volleyball coach Kris Dorn.
We are pleased today to be joined by Kris Dorn, the head coach of Vanguard University Beach Volleyball. You had the pleasure of starting this program a few years ago. So before we kind of talked about the history of Vanguard Beach Volleyball, just kind of give us a lowdown of the fall season, the fall preparations, the practices, and kind of where the team is at kind of right now before we officially launch into this spring season.
Hey, great question, Jeff. We really have a lot of fun in the fall. So for us, it's a balance of, obviously we want to work hard and get great repetitions in, but it's also about monitoring your bodies. And the sand uses so many different stabilizer muscle groups that you don't use in other things. And so a lot of it is just getting our bodies accustomed to doing that well. It's a lot of balance. It's a lot of, and also balancing what we do in the weight room, what we do on the sand, the number of swings we take, the pressure on our shoulders and our knees from jumping and landing. So a lot of the fall is a lot of fun. It's a lot of getting to know each other as far as our team bonding. But just as far as like volleyball touches and sand touches, we try and are very careful with monitoring how much we do, if that makes sense. Outside of that, it's just an incredible time for our team chemistry. It's, when we come back from Christmas break is kind of when we have our like retreat, basically, which is a weekend of bonding time with us. But we get plenty of stuff to do in the fall as well. We also try and do some teaching times during that time of really trying to discover our personal identity through God, because we believe that like the more I have that set in stone, then everything else becomes a little bit easier. And I understand that I have a base to draw back to. And more importantly, if I see that same identity, that same value in my teammate across the net or next to me in the partnership, like I want to come back to that value. So I may be frustrated, I may be down, but my partner can help me bring me back to that center of realizing that I'm valued and I'm known and I'm seen. And so a lot of that stuff kind of starts taking root in the fall, and that's why it kind of makes it so fun and so personal.
Absolutely. So we've kind of touched on it a little bit for our friends at home that may not know kind of, the rules of beach volleyball. They might see it every 4 years during Olympics coverage, and seeing Misty May and Carrie Walsh and those kind of girls. What is, the objective, the kind of the rules a little bit of NAI beach volleyball?
Well, as you know, it's a full contact sport with swords. No, it's a lot of fun. It's a little bit different. So I guess we'll start with the differences from indoor to outdoor. So indoor, you play 25 points. We play 21. Indoor matches usually play 3 of 5 sets, and the best 3 out of 5 wins. We play best 2 out of 3. And most of the differences for those two changes is because of just the wear and tear on your body of moving in the sand, being in the constant elements under the sun, moving with the wind. people don't understand how difficult that is until they come out for the first couple times and
Rain
try
or shine,
it.
too.
Exactly. Yeah, a couple times you were there last year where it's raining sideways and we're still playing.
Yeah.
So a lot of those differences are just because it's, there's so much physical difference between it's, all of that weight rests on two people's shoulders, and you are so much more involved in every single play. And that's not a rip on indoor volleyball. It's just a difference. Some of the other differences that if you were to come out and watch, is just even the way that we set the ball is slightly different. So every technique is just different enough where a person trained in indoor volleyball could come and probably do pretty well, but it's going to take their bodies a long time to adjust to those little balancing things that we were talking about. How I can get the most explosion out of the sand, adjusting to a ball that's moved 3 or 4 feet into the wind, making sure I can see around the sun and get into a shadow so I can dig this next ball. So everything's a little bit different enough, but it's really a fun game. It's definitely a game of a little bit of power, a lot of explosiveness, and definitely a lot of finesse. And so you're constantly trying to move your opponents around. There's a lot of vision involved because you're trying to, obviously you want the easiest shot that's going to go down the quickest. And so how I view my opponents, how I view my teammate, we talk about, like, I want to be completely transparent with my teammate, and they need to know exactly what I'm going to do. So I want to show them exactly what I'm going to do with my body language and my positioning. And it's the exact opposite for my opponent. So when it comes up to time to attack or time to serve, then I'm trying to disguise and manipulate things so it looks like I'm going one place and going another. So a lot of fun.
So we throw out 5 pairs.
Yes.
Sometimes we'll play a 6 depending on the opponent and things like that. When we just play the 5, 5, 3, and 2 play at the same time, and then 1 and 4 traditionally play after that.
Yeah, and it just depends. Some places will go, and we traditionally, when we run it at our place, we'll do the 2, 4, 6 seeds, and then the second round will be the 1, 3, 5. And I actually stole that from Todd Rogers because he liked the idea of, hey, because the 6th pair, like you mentioned, kind of plays more of an exhibition match, so it doesn't count for a major point. But if we have a tie, with the 2 and 4 seed, then we kind of still have to wait to see who wins for that second round. So now when we do the 1, 3, 5, then you'll see the best 3 out of 5 wins.
Absolutely.
So, if that makes sense. If I'm not being clear. No. So each team that wins a match gets a point for the team.
Yes. So it's a little bit of women's indoor volleyball mixed with tennis.
Yes.
A little bit with, how the team scoring goes. You're playing 2 sets to 21, third set to 15, and the winner of that gets 1 team point and kind of breaks it down from there. And you can move pairs up and down depending on how, but traditionally you like to keep your pairs together, and if you need to move for some reason, you're moving the whole pair from court 1 to court 2 or court 3 up to court 2 and things like that, correct?
Yes, and that's going to be a differentiation in each coach too. So we will play a lot of teams that will mix partnerships, and there are a lot of coaches that have, the really deep rosters, the 25 kids, the 30 kids, who won't tell their squad who they're playing with or what seed they're playing at until the tournament comes up or until that next match comes up. So a lot of people do play with the fluidity of the roster. But when you're right, there is not just unwritten rules, but there is some ruling as far as how much you can move a pair up or down. And so if we were to play our ones pair in a tri-match one day, they can only go as far down as the second seed for that next match. So there is a little bit of a rule structure there, so I'm not like sandbagging and having my top players play the 5 seed because I know they can win against somebody.
Exactly.
So it is a little bit of a dance and a little bit of a play. And we know ahead of time, just because of the variety of majors we have on our team, that let's say, okay, somebody in the nursing program is going to miss a couple matches. And so if one of my nurses is going to miss a match, then we'll probably mix up the entire roster. And that's why it's so important for the fall and so important even now that as we're getting into partnerships that I still am fluid, I'm speaking the same language, I have chemistry with everybody on the team because I might play with them at some point.
Exactly. So bring us back to the time you are chosen to build this program ground up. It's not even an emerging sport in the NAI yet. There's very few teams that are doing it, but the projected growth at the NAI level is there because of what they're doing at the D1 level. You're recruiting your team, and we're playing the big boys, and we're grinding, but the wins on the scoreboard aren't matching the wins on the sand and in life. in the first year, and that kind of flipped in the second year. So kind of year 1, year 2, entering year 3, how did that kind of shape out in your head? Playing the long game, developing people at the same time as we want to get a couple W's on the scoreboard.
Yes, all of that. You're right. It's, really praying about kind of starting this program and what life it would take on, because again, every team takes on a life of its own. And the coach isn't necessarily always in control of that. We can plant ideas, we can help, pull people along, but really we need leaders to lead from that perspective. And so praying about this a lot, it was definitely clear that this had to be, our legacy had to be set out of our character first and how we treated each other, the type of sisterhood that we had amongst our team, and then that would dictate everything else. So in that first recruiting process, which is by far the weirdest recruiting process of my entire life, I was still coaching men's volleyball in the Midwest, and so it was JP, my wife, who's the women's indoor coach here, would take people on visits if they were going to come. Like I'd never met any of my girls until they basically came on campus,
Which is exactly how you recommend doing it, right?
Exactly, yeah. Why not? Just never meet them. But we had great conversations, and I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt where, even though I believe almost 80% of our team that first year was very new to beach volleyball or had never played a real match in their life. So
they were more just traditional indoor.
Yes, but I cannot stress enough just how we've been blessed with young women who came in and desiring something special, desiring something with depth, and desiring something that was authentic. And so I basically just asked a couple questions and then got out of their way. And they were a highly mature group in wanting to engage in what this looked like. And again, building that legacy of, hey, let's build a legacy of love. And that was kind of our first push in the first year. And you're right, it didn't come up with a lot of wins on the end as far as the scoreboard was concerned, but how we were able to push through. And a lot of people still think of that love as like, oh, it's just a little fluffy emotion. It's like, no. True love means challenge. True love means accountability. True love means discipline. And true love in a partnership like beach volleyball, it's almost like a marriage where I cannot let anything sit. If it's on my mind, I've got to get it out, and then we just have to figure out a way to kind of come back on the same page. And it's very much about healthy conflict. It's very much about honoring each other in that culture. And these girls just did an incredible job of doing that. And as you mentioned, now we've kind of been able to just increase our skill level, increase our touches, increase our vision again. So it should be a really fun year. We saw some great results last year, and again, we never want to be results oriented, but I really do think that our character and our drive and now our practice environment is leading into the victories on the scoreboard.
Yeah. So at the end of first year, tough. Playing kind of a stacked schedule because that was who wanted to play us, and we're never going to turn a game down. And then the next year, a couple more NEI teams kind of that are our size of institutions start adding teams. So we kind of, put up a pretty good record against the, sister schools kind of vibe. And then we go to the, the national championship out in Florida, and we finish runner-up to a school in our conference. So it's almost worse in that fact because, they're there. But, what's going on in the world of beach volleyball? Because it's growing like crazy. Our conference just added it. We're one of the first conferences at the NCAA level in the country to sponsor beach volleyball, which makes sense being in Southern California and us having practices on the beach every day. But what's going on in the world of beach volleyball right now that's kind of exploding on that front?
It's a fun time, like you mentioned, and it's starting kind of how most programs start, and you can almost compare it to men's volleyball and a lot of how those programs started. Initially, it's not a full-time coach. That's usually like, hey, you're the women's coach. Now why don't you coach the men's side? And so it's we're seeing a little bit of that pattern as well of let it build some credibility. We're not going to put a ton of money into it yet, but we want to see that this could be successful and a good thing for our
check the viability
exactly.
of it kind of.
Is it sustainable? Is it inexpensive, and does it bring students in? So all of those kind of things like that. So I think every school is doing a little bit of that, of being guarded until it can kind of prove itself. And so I think the only team actually right now in this conference that we've just built, the only team that actually has a full-time dedicated beach volleyball staff is Ottawa in Arizona. So again, I think that's part of what we're all working towards, because it can be such a great thing. And even if you're looking to train your indoor girls in the off season, it's so good for aerobic conditioning and all those little stabilizer muscles. So But it's an exciting time because I think we're going to see more and more conferences in the next couple of years build across the country and a more competitive region.
So what do you, as you kind of are looking forward a little bit into this season and having a conference, does it change the way you coach a little bit? Of like, hey, these games matter overall, but actually we're going towards a conference goal, which is a new idea for this 2-year stretch. How does that kind of change your preparation, how you coach the team? And
that's a great question. That's actually something that we're trying to walk through together because, again, like this cannot be, or I will say that at least the team that we built, it's not going to be successful if I come in and slam this thing down on the desk and say this is our vision. And so this is about asking the right questions, and even the language that we use. Some people, goal setting is like, oh my gosh, I love that. And some people that's something to be ashamed of, or something that brings up great fear. And so even those are the questions we're posing right now. Is in the past we've had the benefit of being on this slight incline. And we want to continue to incline and get better and better and be able to frame everything that way. So last year, that was a great thing to do. Just like, hey, look, you want everything go towards Florida. And as long as we take every bump in the road and every high and every low into stride and learn from it, then it's going to benefit us in Florida. And we want to keep getting better on that slow incline. And this year, I think we're leaning towards that same thing and kind of keeping Florida as the main goal of the small school championships. And certainly having the GSAC tournament as a milestone, but we also don't want to blow that out of proportion as well. Yeah. And as you've seen, like, I think our schedule is I think still about 40% Division I school. So there's some great challenges along the way. And again, win, lose, we're going to find out a lot about ourselves and kind of how we can get better as well.
From your point of view as, the coaching seat, what do you think is the most important thing of those Division I opponents of playing University of Washington and University of Arizona and Long Beach State, teams that are ranked top 10 in the in the NCAA, Division I level, and then, we're rolling in there with our team who, would be ranked in the NAIA poll if there was one, but just, the size difference of the athletes and things like that. What do you think is the biggest benefit that our team gets competing up a level?
Belief. And hands down, I think we saw that a lot the first year of we took our licks, as you mentioned. We got a lot of experience through failure. And again, that's something that we not only had to embrace, but want to embrace. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to be an underdog. And if you frame it the right way in your mind and with your partner, then it can be an incredibly elevating experience of something where you can kind of help bring your partner up to another level because number one, you sometimes, if you come in again with the right mindset, you have nothing to lose. There's nothing to this. You don't have any chip on your shoulder, and so you can go out there with this kind of experimental mindset of like, look, I'm going to try these things. I'm going to try and be as extreme as I possibly can. I'm trying to have the best vision I possibly can. And if I mess up, then I make a tweak. And especially when I'm doing it against the quote unquote big dogs, with slightly bigger blockers and people have been playing a little bit longer than we have. It's so much fun now to see. Okay. Can my best beat their best? And this game is such a poetry in motion. Can I get them on their heels? Can I turn the tide of the momentum? And so it's such a fun challenge for us.
I think one of the coolest things is the first victory ever in Vanguard Beach Volleyball was against a Division I team. And, so that's one of those things that, they'll never be able to take away from us, the fact that we got it done at that level. So you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier that you were a men's indoor volleyball coach before you made the transition to beach. You've been in the volleyball world since you could barely walk, things like that. So what's your path with volleyball, as you kind of went, you were coaching D1, D2 men's volleyball, and then you kind of was like, hey, let's go try our hat at this beach volleyball thing, Throughout your history, what do you see looking back was kind of leading you every step of the way from Cal Baptist out to the Midwest, things like that to kind of reach Vanguard?
Oh, that's a long story.
We got time.
Yeah. I think the simplest form of entering that is I had very high aspirations as a younger head coach, and frankly a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I didn't come. Volleyball world, at least on the men's side, is kind of a lot about who you played for, where you came from, what accolades you have, what coach you played for. So it's you kind of have to throw down the gauntlet. And if you don't have that kind of background or that kind of resume, you really have to kind of fight your way into things. So my goal early on was definitely ego oriented, although I didn't realize at the time, of trying to be a young Division I women's head coach. And that was my goal. That was what I was driving for. I got some great experiences underneath some great head coaches and some phenomenal schools. And then finally did get that. And honestly, this was a weird time in our lives. It was when JP and I had first gotten married, and I think that our staff came in with, hey, we're gonna ramp this up. And both my assistants, including obviously my wife, came from high level Division I programs, and we were at a mid level Division I school that we were trying to turn around. And we realized that we were not our best as far as loving these young ladies, as far as really having their best interests in mind, even though I think in our heads we did, but our actions weren't displaying that. And so coming to Cal Baptist was certainly an eye-opener of yes, coming back to some of our family, coming back into men's volleyball, and kind of some of those things that we certainly wanted to do, but it was also a chance to step back and be like, whoa. Like, I'll speak for myself personally, is I might be the man that I want to be, or the man that I'm striving for in some areas of life, but I am certainly not the coach that I need to be, as far as when it comes to giving people even, I guess just the honoring that they deserve. And coaching has so much power in it, as far as you're a mentor, you're a counselor, you're an actor, you're a teacher, you're a disciplinarian, you're a strategist, but also you're a manipulator. And so it's a dangerous power to have if you're not centered the right way. And so that really refocused our goal, and that kind of dictated the second half of our careers of how can we really honor people, how can we speak into their lives. And for both my wife and I, like, that was in college was where we got to practice every day of being the man and woman that we wanted to be, and failing at it miserably, but having people around us that would push us back up and support us and say, we got you. And that's really kind of turned the tide. And so honestly, the main change between the men's game and this was I really enjoyed the men's game, love the athleticism. As you've seen now we have a men's program. It's high flying, it's fast paced, it's super intense. And I think just a little bit of life stuff, a little bit of hard life stuff that JP and I are going through, but also just a lot of just wanting to get back to, again, the roots. Is I think that I was getting caught up in a little bit of the Division I world again, of that, winning is kind of your biggest and your only result sometimes that you get to see and measure. And I don't think that's a healthy philosophy, or at least let's say for me. And so getting back to this, I've really started praying intentionally for a beach program, and that door would open, because it's always been a passion. I've always loved the game, and again, the fluidity and even the things that it brings out of your own character that get exposed. You get exposed in different ways because the partnership is so much more intimate and intense. And the idea of getting to be a part of that, and frankly, even my heart desired to get back to the women's game, because as I love the men's game and I love the men, and I like having those relationships, and there's a different type of mentorship there. Women can be so over the top, like loving each other when they do it well. And so it's been such a fun part to get to be part of this experience. And I don't know that I really answered a lot of your question, but that's really what brought us back to this point of just that, there's the natural intensity of the game, and then there's this incredible beauty and, again, fluidity, and you're just being out in nature with the elements of you can't help but also have like kind of this just get loose attitude, in between those intense moments. And I think it helps the training environment too, because you can get really close to people quickly. Absolutely.
So as your mind starts shifting towards your season opener, which is coming up February 21st, so just about 2 weeks away here. What do you see that's different in the training sessions and with the girls and on the sand, in the weight room, in your Bible studies, in your team meetings, now that you can actually see that finish line of the start, Yeah.
And that's a lot of fun. I think that's, we've seen such great strides already in again, the character of our team and how they love each other. And something we do is life stories. And so that's some part of our retreat. And so just even seeing, hearing the ladies who have been with us for, this is their third year, it's the third time telling their life story, but even how much more intricate it is, or the highlights that they now highlight, or the vulnerabilities that they'll now expose and share with the team and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with now, or this is something that I fought through, and this is where I am now. And being able to celebrate each other, that's an amazing thing. So I don't want to diminish that point at all, because again, I think that plays into our overall team chemistry and how we do on the court. The practice environment, I think, is probably the healthiest it's ever been as far as continuous challenge, the work that's put forth. And I'll just say this, in kind of looking at sports in general right now, is I think that sometimes that people think if I work hard, then I deserve ... And we are very blessed, let's say, because of our environment right now is I am going to work hard, not only because it's an expectation of our team, but because I know it benefits me and it benefits my teammate. And that's such a beautiful space to be around. And so I can count on I can count on one hand the number of times I've actually had to come alongside a player and say, hey, Jeff, it doesn't look like you're giving your all right now. Like, what's the background right now? What's going on? There's already a healthy challenge and love on our team. So that's playing out into high-level competition, into very fast, dynamic drills, but also this incredible intentionality that we need to be great teammates, but also be great competitors on the court.
And what are the biggest transitions that's going on this year as opposed to your first couple of years was year one, everyone's new. Year two, we had one new recruit who stepped in. So, she single-handedly is stepping into, oh no, they built this. I got to kind of slide myself in there and kind of figure out where I fit in this. And then this year, it's a little more balanced because, we had the pleasure of graduating our first 2 alumni from the program last year. And so it's a little bit more balanced there, which probably brings everyone a little bit more on the same level because there's more people that they have to know and figure out and tell their life story to, rather than, kind of those first 2 building block years.
Yeah. And to be completely honest, I don't know that we didn't do it that well last year. So we learned a lot of lessons last year too, of having a lot of returners and understanding what does this look like to adopt somebody else into our sisterhood. And so you're exactly right. Like, I feel like the upperclassmen have done such a good job, or I should say the returners. And this is such a weird sport, right? Because you have true freshmen playing at 17 and 18 years old, and you also have graduate students who play at 23 and 24 years old. So it's a big swing in age gaps and life experience. And that's what's so impressive is having 5 new young ladies on this team, is how they've integrated themselves, but also how they've been adopted by the existing culture. So.
Which is awesome. So I know you guys are ready to rock and roll. February 21st, 10 a.m., University of St. Catherine, out in Huntington Beach. That'll be a little fun matchup for Vanguard, as on the other side of the net will be old coach here at Vanguard. So that'll be a fun little reunion for us. But I know you guys certainly want to tell her what's up and kind of start the season off on the right note. So, Kris, thank you for joining us here, and we'll see you out on the sand this season.
Thanks, Jeff.
Welcome back into the studio. You just had a conversation with Jeff Melton and head beach volleyball coach Kris Dorn. And Jeff, Kris is awesome. You guys had an incredible conversation. And for you, what is something that that maybe stood out as you were speaking with him? And we already know a lot about him, but even in that conversation, as you got into a deeper level, what was something for you that maybe you didn't know before, or something that you thought was just great?
Yeah, I just think it's kind of being a part of something that's emerging, and how excited he was for that, and how he kind of predicted the trend going a little bit and started praying about an opportunity even before Vanguard had even had a conversation about adding beach volleyball. He was actively praying, asking God to open a door for that. And then, it's so great to have, both the Dorns on campus, and then, Kris with his role in that direct spiritual aspect that he brings, not only to his team, but the department as a whole, through the other things he does around campus, and just how direct he is about that, and how he views that as like the greatest calling in it, and everything on the sand is a bonus. It's the cherry on top for what's going on. And it's kind of crazy because we've been here part of this whole ride of beach volleyball, and we were talking, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have alumni from beach volleyball. Like, we graduated out people, and we're bringing in our third recruiting class. And it's kind of, it hit me of just like, man, all of us that were here at that time were part of something so foundational that are just going to change lives for years and years and years to come. And it was actually kind of like a little humbling conversation to have with Kris in that way.
Yeah, no, that's great. And like you said, Kris has established a culture here in that beach volleyball program that people are wanting to be a part of. And once maybe they don't know anything about it when they step in, but they love it, and they love Kris in his heart. And I think you guys were all able to just hear that, and just hear just how much he loves on his program and his girls, and even just the rest of the campus here too. It's not just isolated to the beach volleyball program. It's all of the student athletes here. I know he mentors a lot of the male student athletes here as well. It's really cool what he's been doing here. So super blessed to have him here. So thank you guys so much for joining us again on this episode of the Coach's Corner. Feel free to continue to listen to us on any device that you listen to, as well as any of the options or mediums that you listen to, whether it be Google, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. I think I said that already.
Yeah.
And then
we're everywhere, man.
Wherever we are, Facebook, we're all over the place here, YouTube as well. So thanks much again. Feel free to like us, rate us, share it with your friends, and we will talk to you next time as we jump into the Coach's Corner on the Vanguard Athletics Podcast Network.